Where am I at? Here we go. And I still don't have that button reconfigured. Hey, everybody, Paul Lathrop. I am the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. We are getting set to record another edition of the Polite Society podcast. This is the part of the broadcast where you get to see the sausage being made. I'm still getting social media hooked up. I'm still getting everything in the final configuration. So, no guest tonight. It's going to be a bit of a short show again. Just mainly talking news and DGUs. And we do have DGUs this week, thanks to Dana, who came back. So, all right. Look at show notes. And I do want to mention before we actually start pushing buttons and making a recording happen, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube on the Polite Society podcast pages, you can comment on the live video there, and I'll get your comments. We'll put them up on the air. If you are watching on OpsLens or anywhere else and catching us live, if you tweet with the hashtag PSPodcast, that actually gets here the fastest. I'll get your comments up. We'll discuss your comments on the air. I think the intro's written. Folks, are we ready to fly? All right. In that case, Masada Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
You know, you'd think after 630 episodes I'd have this memorized. Hi, and welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast, where we're recording this one on Monday, August the 22nd, 2022. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show we'll talk about the state of California violating the First Amendment rights of gun owners. Not once, but twice.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about the Pennsylvania Supreme Court trying to override a federal law.
And I'm Amanda Suffecool, and we're going to talk about the Minnesota judge that's ignoring the Bruin decision. And it was on his ruling on the Minnesota State Fair and guns at the fair. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 631 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. And welcome back. It's Monday night at 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, which means it is time for another episode of the Polite Society podcast. Rob, I'm going to do what I normally do every week, and I'm going to say, what have you been up to since the last time you've been on PSP, man?
I was out last week. I took a family trip. It was great. I'm glad to also be back. It's Monday, so I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show today. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I carried every day when I was at home. On this little field trip, I went to the Washington, D.C. area where I did not carry. On a personal note, I'm still struggling to recover from travelers' illnesses, so don't lose weight that way. John, tell me you're doing better than I am.
I think I am.
Great.
Actually, I am home alone this week as Barb is off doing grandma duty. Fortunately, Joe Pesci has not tried to break in. It's 2 weeks into my retirement, so in exciting news related to that, I have signed up for Medicare Part B or D in my supplement. Adulting is so much fun. I am actually getting excited about GRPC and our follow-on road trip to Texas. I started checking out places I'd like to stop stuff like the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame and Museum, the Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, and a whole lot of good barbecue places.
I can recommend one down in Houston if you're going down that far.
Not going towards Houston. Going down Austin and Waco, San Antonio, going to see the Alamo, and then work my way up through the hill country. So,
all right, Amanda, what's been up with you since the last time you've been on Polite Society?
Well, I haven't been to the range in a couple weeks. I'm going to have to correct that this week. It has got to be corrected. But at the same time, this is County Fair Week, so you know what that means, fair food. So hang on, I may not fit in my holster by next week. So I'll fill you in then. Paul, what about you?
Well, Susan and I are still working on AmCon and GRPC, and I'm frantically working on GRPC from my end as far as equipment and broadcast and all that stuff. I have not been to the gun range this week, period. And we've got a family paid membership. I can go quite literally anytime I want to the range, no cost whatsoever. I just go, check in, say, hey, I'm here. They assign me a lane, and I go shoot. It's kind of inexcusable that I haven't been using it as much as I have. I more than I have. So
Hey, I have a key. I'm just saying, and I still have not been to the range.
yeah, I really need to change that. But on a personal note, I got to go on a wonderful, enjoyable ride this morning. Something I don't get enough to do. Didn't get to do enough. Susan's bike is having a little bit of a problem shifting. She didn't want to ride it the 80 miles to go to the dealership we trust to fix it right. And so I got elected to ride. She got elected to drive the car behind, so we had something to come back with when we left her bike there. But it's very much a fall-feeling morning when I'm out this morning. The temperatures were in the upper 50s, lower 60s, and just absolutely loved the ride. Had a beautiful time, and am very much looking forward to fall temperatures and not sweating when you have to completely cover up in your safety gear. So, let me get, before we speed off to our first, Susan, is there anything you want to talk about that you've been up to since the last time you've been on the air?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Woman of few words. Let's get a few comments in here from our live viewers. Roderick says, howdy from Fort Wayne in the free state of Indiana. Dana says, you didn't think I would come back? Where else would I spend my Mondays? Certainly not watching Monday Night Football. George says, greetings from behind enemy lines in San Diego, California. And Jonna Dean says, John, don't forget to look me up when you're in San Antonio.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's do this. I want to talk a little bit about the Self-Defense Radio Network. Our tagline, all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. As you can see, we're there. Rob's Self-Defense Gun Stories is there. Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns. Amanda's Eye on the Target Radio. Charlie Cook's Riding Shotgun with Charlie. More shows are coming. Dan Waz has applied to be on the network. That's still in the works. I think it's just basically getting the I's dotted and T's crossed and everything done to get him on the network. He's had more than enough shows to qualify for the network, and he's got a very good quality show. So I hope to be able to see him soon there. But if you're looking for another podcast, go check out sdrn.us. You can listen right off the website, and you can, if you're interested in subscribing, the subscription information for each of the shows is there as well. So let's go ahead and step off to our first break. When we come back, we're going to get to news, and we'll do that right after we hear from ACLN. Back after this, folks.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
And welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Let's go ahead and get started. Susan, what's first stories out of Pennsylvania? What's up?
The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania made a rare decision last week declaring the PLCAA to be unconstitutional due to the 10th Amendment. They stated that tort law was strictly under the purview of the states and the PLCAA regulated tort law. The dissent in Congress said that the law fell under the Commerce Clause of the Constitution. The law did not direct states to enact a law or administer a federal law. This case will definitely move to the federal level.
You know, given that the 10th Amendment, for lack of a better word, is almost a forgotten amendment, I think they're going to have a hard time when it ends up in federal court. And given that it's coming from a federal or a state level Supreme Court, it doesn't have to go through district court or appeals court. It goes right to the SCOTUS. Hopefully they will take it.
John, might they just accept it, remand it, and return it without review?
That they could accept the state's decision?
No, that they would. Do they need to conduct a full hearing at SCOTUS, or could they just remand it, say, no, the equivalent of a preliminary injunction? Hi, you got this so wrong, go away.
Exactly, they could. They don't have to necessarily grant certiorari.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
They just give an order.
But I'll tell you, I really believe that the PLCAA needs a little love, because this thing with Bushmaster and the fact that Bushmaster didn't exist and the insurance companies settled out of court has led a lot of other lawyers and cases to believe that it's null and void and that it's game over for PLCAA protection. So I think it needs redefined.
I agree.
Absolutely. And I will give it to the Brady campaign, who seems to be the brains behind most of the attacks on the PLCAA, that they have found a way potentially around it by going after advertising under state law rather than any of the 6 exceptions built into it.
John, that's going to be fascinating, because that is going to tie in very closely, and I think we're going to mention it here in the news articles, with laws in California that say you can't market firearms to minors. Minors can't buy firearms. Oh, no, we don't want you to influence them in their subsequent decisions that they'll make when they're adults. So your shirt that says Remington on it has the stag. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, that's designed for children. The cricket rifles that were designed to be gifts to children. See, you're clearly trying to influence what children will think when they become adults. Basically, this is an attack on the armed culture. I would say on the culture of individual responsibility. So, yeah, this is a First Amendment question.
Well, I think it also goes back to in those states where the Supreme Court is elected, elections matter. I mean, we're seeing this in Pennsylvania. In North Carolina, our state Supreme Court, which is 4 Democrats and 3 Republicans, just overrode a constitutional amendment that was voted in by almost 60% of the voters by
Electorate.
saying the legislature that submitted this to the voters was gerrymandered.
Then every law they did is in
Oh,
question, not just that one.
They said no. That's not. Those aren't in question. Just this constitutional amendment.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Right. Yeah, well, look at what's happening with Ohio. Ohio had a Republican majority in their Supreme Court, and the last election lost 2 Supreme Court justices. We have one Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of our Supreme Court had been a voting Democrat for years and did not believe that they could be elected onto the Supreme Court as a Democrat. So switched parties, became a Republican, got voted onto the court, is now the Chief Justice, and pretty much sides with the Democrats the whole way. So
well, that's Soros money doing the talking, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a hot mess. I mean, if you look at what's happening with Ohio's elections, it is primarily, I mean, the fact that we had to have 2 elections in the primaries is because of the Supreme Court makeup that we have right now. Elections matter.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's not in the show notes for today, so I'm kind of dropping the bomb on you guys, but on the bullet, John Petrolino and I talked about this maybe an hour ago. There is a bill that is still brewing in the Ohio legislature, going back to the Senate Bill 357. It's ironically titled bill, or the ironically numbered bill, that would add red flag laws, add safe storage laws, and do a whole bunch of other nasty stuff in Ohio. And the media is pushing this thing, even though it's got no co-sponsors, and one Republican, Matt Dolan, out of Chagrin Falls.
Chagrin Falls.
Chagrin Falls.
Matt Dolan is so what about Matt Dolan? Because he's no longer a senator. So is that an old bill? Because look at the date on it. Because Matt Dolan's no longer, he was running for the U.S. Senate. Mm-hmm. So he was one of the 7 U.S. Senate candidates that went up against and where J.D. Vance won. And Matt Dolan's family owns the Cleveland Indian Guardian ball playing whatever they are team.
Well, looking at going to the Yahoo News article right now, in an attempt to revive some of the strong Ohio proposals against gun violence stalled in the General Assembly since 2019, faces a timeline that's hard to meet. State Senator Matt Dolan, Republican, Chagrin Falls, announced Senate Bill 357 this week. The article's dated on Saturday. He's seeking legislative co-sponsors, but the bill won't get any formal consideration until lawmakers reconvene after the November 8th general election. And basically the story goes on to say if it's not done by December 31st, it's just done. And what a crying shame that would be.
Yeah, I'm looking to see when Matt Dolan's Senate district thing was up or is up. Maybe he's still a senator until...
But among the bill's provisions, a red flag law requiring anyone ages 18 to 21 who wants to buy a gun that can fire more than one shot before reloading to get a co-signer at least 25 years old for the purchase. Dolan said there is an exemption for young people in the military or in the police.
See, the Strong Ohio thing is the Governor DeWine's.
Yeah.
And this is all in response to the shootings in Dayton. That Nan Whaley, who is now running for governor against DeWine, really was pushing for, and this was his way of pushing back against it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, what John and I basically came to the conclusion of is Ohio's I'd say Ohio's in the top 50% of gun rights states. And
40.
Yeah. I don't see this getting a lot of attention, especially before the elections. So, Susan, we've burned up a lot of time on this. We've got a SAF story about California.
The Second Amendment Foundation has filed a federal lawsuit challenging California State Senate Bill 264, a ban on gun shows held on public property that was passed and signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom. SAF leader and Executive Vice President Alan Gottlieb explains, the state has been regulating gun show operations almost out of existence and more restrictive than brick-and-mortar retail gun shops or even internet sales. Now, the California Senate Bill 256 ban amounts to a total deprivation of rights under the color of law, including the First Amendment rights of free speech and freedom of assembly, and the 14th Amendment's equal protection under the law. This lawsuit follows our successful action against the Del Mar Fairgrounds, but the regulatory ban regime now in place in California applies to any gun show on public property anywhere in the state. What's alarming to us is that Crossroads of the West has followed the rules, and so have vendors at their gun shows. Yet the state is prohibiting constitutionally protected activities that are common all over the country and are already highly regulated. Like it or not, Gottlieb continues, gun shows are public forums where like-minded people can meet and discuss various issues, engage in firearm sales and purchases, learn about gun safety, and enjoy the camaraderie inherent at such events. Obviously, the defendants don't like that, but they simply cannot violate constitutional rights to satisfy a personal disdain.
I'm going to jump in first on this one. As Alan Gottlieb explained in it, SAF won this lawsuit against the Del Mar Fairgrounds, and the state of California said, well, fine, instead of just being at Del Mar, we're going to make it the entire state. Well, guess what? SAF slapped you once upside the head. Brace yourself, another slap's coming. They're just delaying the inevitable.
California also said you can't market firearms where minors can see them. That means gun stores, as I said earlier, are afraid to sell single-shot cricket rifles in California, even though minors can't buy firearms. You wearing an NRA hat could be considered marketing the gun culture to minors. Look, it's another violation of the First Amendment by liberals. John, what do you think?
Well, we talked about this a little bit last week, where you're seeing ranges banning those under 18 from even coming to the range. And there was an Olympic, like a junior Olympian who could be the next gold medalist, can't find a place to shoot. She's 16. But what I'm looking at this lawsuit, the one thing that I think is really good about it, over and above challenging the law, is it shows that various gun rights groups from across the spectrum can come together and work for the common good. You have the California Rifle and Pistol Association, which is the NRA's affiliate in California. You have SAF. You have the Asian American Gun Owners Association. You have a number of associations coming together to work. So it's not like, oh, a SAF lawsuit, a California Rifle and Pistol Association lawsuit, a Gun Owners of America lawsuit. It's much better to work together on stuff like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it shows a united front, and I think that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Get this comment in here. George Geller says, next they'll outlaw junior shooting competitions. Oh, wait.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, will they say that Eddie Eagle is marketing for firearms?
It's a cartoon with their wing team.
Yep.
Yeah. And we had a story last week where the Scholastic trap shooting or skeet shooting league had to shut down. And what stuck, and I actually talked to a physical therapist about this week. The entire history of high school competition in California, they've never had a single injury in skeet shooting. Not even somebody tripping and twisting an ankle on the range. Compare that with any other high school sport, period, anywhere.
Okay, I did. The shooting
Of
sports
course you
are
did.
far safe.
I'm sorry. Oh, once an
They are-
engineer,
the sh-
always an engineer.
Did the pot just call the kettle black, John? I will ask that of you. Yeah, compared to cheer or gymnastics, oh my God. We have no injuries.
Yeah. Even non-contact sports like basketball and baseball. Yeah, non-contact. We try to keep this about guns, but when's the last time you seen a non-contact sport where somebody's sliding in from third trying to get home, to beat the throw into home? That's contact when the base runner meets catcher. Get two more comments in here, then we'll move on to our next story. Let's see here. There we go. Paul says, gun control is about people control. Absolutely it is. And George says, hunters are the folks that really care about wildlife. They put lots of money that goes into habitat preservation and other things with the yummy critters. And George, they do that outside of the excise tax that we all pay. I know hunters that put a lot of their own money outside of, again, what they purchase in guns and ammunitions into hunting habitats, into helping out here and there. And you don't see a single environmentalist doing the same thing. They just want you to not be able to do what you do.
You're right. I mean, they should be buying a hunting license every year just to
do you
help fund
see
it.
where they're going after Pittman-Robertson? The
Yes.
Pittman-Robertson Act?
Yes.
They're trying to defund it so that the good works that it does, they want to take that away.
You know what the
John?
sad part about that bill is? It's coming from our side.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
A couple more comments in here. Simon says, Train, I love Amanda. She couldn't help from busting Rob's chops.
Thanks, Tony. What?
John Dean says, kids' sports are why I am so busy. And for those of you who are not aware, Dr. John Dean is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon. So, yeah, he is certainly in a position to know. And then MC over on the YouTube side says, Pittman-Robertson sets aside tax from sporting good and gun sales specifically for preserving hunting. That cash is off limit to politicians, and they hate that fact.
Do you know what they're doing here, though? They are using Pittman-Robertson money to buy lands for preserving the lands, and then they say, well, they don't have staff to allow you to walk the land or to hunt the land or to hike the land or to do anything. So they're buying the land using our money, and then they're telling us, stay off of it.
Well, at least one good thing, a few years ago they amended it so that up to 10% of the money can be used to build shooting ranges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get one more story in before we go to the bottom of the hour break. Susan, tell us about another SAF lawsuit.
They've been
The
busy.
Second Amendment Foundation and Defense Distributed Incorporated of Texas have filed for an injunction in their federal case challenging a New Jersey statute that prohibits the publication of computer files containing digital firearms information and ongoing legal action. SAF and Defense Distributed are asking the court to set an expedited briefing schedule and resolve their motion promptly. SAF founder and executive Vice President Alan Gottlieb said the New Jersey Attorney General is wielding a blatantly unconstitutional speech crime against us, and it's time for this nonsense to stop. New Jersey's strategy has been to deploy evasive tactics to delay court rulings. New Jersey is engaging in prior restraint, causing irreparable harm across the country, and the legal gamemanship is deliberately designed to increase our litigation costs in what appears to be an effort to discourage us from further pursuit of our case.
I'm going to jump in on this one again to start with. If I'm remembering right, and I could be wrong, this started in the Ninth Circuit, and New Jersey tried to move it. It ended up here or there. Now it's in the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit is Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, I believe. And I think the jumping is done, and I think New Jersey's time is up here. Again, I don't want to sound too arrogant, but here's another slap coming. New Jersey, get ready.
So here's a question. What exactly is computer files containing digital firearms information? Is that 3D printing?
3D,
yep.
Yes, 3D CAD files.
Okay, got it.
I saw in today's Federal Register that the ATF redefinition of receivers and serializing of frames. So AR uppers, your polymer 80 stuff, and potentially 3D printed files, it becomes effective 2 days from now on Wednesday, August 24th.
I would guess that our friends that...
Yeah,
go ahead. Say it, John.
I expect lawsuits to be filed 8 a.m. on the 24th.
Yep.
Exactly.
Bingo.
And in this case, with the recent EPA ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court that said, regulatory agencies, show me in black and white where you're authorized to do this, because you execute the laws as written rather than write the laws you like.
Correct. This is probably going to be the only time that we all say EPA and smile.
Because the EPA lost, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
One more comment. Go ahead, John.
And I expect one of our former sponsors, the Firearms Policy Coalition, to jump on this with both feet.
Yeah.
They're ready to go.
Yeah. You get one more comment in here that we need to head to our bottom of the hour. Right, there will be more news, so hang on, everybody. But MC over on the YouTube side says, I'm co-teaching 40-plus hunter safety students this weekend in Michigan. That is awesome. Bringing the next generation in to our sport is just, thank you, I guess is what I'm trying to get to.
There is a school in Michigan that actually has hunter education on the school curriculum, and it is a course that they can select, and it fills a quarter or a semester.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Let's step off to break here. We're going to hear from the Complete Combatant. When we come back, we've got more news, including that news we teased from the Minnesota judge. We'll be getting back to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
And welcome back. This is the second news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Susan, let's go ahead and get to that Minnesota story.
A Minnesota federal district judge defies the Supreme Court's Bruin decision by applying means-end scrutiny and narrow tailoring to a case involving banning firearms at the Minnesota State Fair. The case involved Reverend Tim Christopher, Sarah Cade Hauptman, and the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus suing the State Agriculture Society after the group chose to ban firearms at the state fair. All of the plaintiffs were pro se. Pro se means the plaintiffs represent themselves in court instead of hiring attorneys to litigate the suit. Most pro se lawsuits fail because the plaintiffs are unfamiliar with the intricacies of civil law. It's always advisable to seek outside counsel to increase your chance of a favorable outcome.
All right, Rob, you're up first in show notes.
Yeah, the bad news is we lost. The great news is we can appeal that in a heartbeat, and it should get slapped down so fast. Let's just say the court ruling should happen so quickly, the news will be lag well behind.
Well, the interesting part is that when, we in our statement, we say that most pro se things get thrown out. This didn't get thrown out. It didn't lose because it was pro se. He decided to decide it regardless of that. And so that portion, the fact that they represented themselves, I think is moot in this case. And I just think that the judge was wrongheaded, and somebody's going to hand him his head.
I think you're right, Amanda. And the unfortunate part is this does set minor precedent. This will get overturned. I don't believe it'll be overturned in time for them to go to the Minnesota State Fair. Sorry, Sarah, but I do believe this one's on its way out. So,
John, what do you think?
I remember Alan Gura saying in a talk sometime years ago that he wanted the district court to rule against him quickly, or just to rule quickly, mainly so that he could take it then to the Court of Appeals, so that he would have something that would be definitely have more precedent than if he just won in, let's say, the Eastern District in North Carolina, because it wouldn't have a multi-state precedent.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, wouldn't that be interesting if they bounced this to the U.S. Supreme Court, they slap it down, and now California has to wear it? Ooh.
Right. I mean, this could get really good.
Yes.
And I think technically, if the judge wanted to cause it to stand, he was wrong in the fact that he took it and made a decision and didn't just pitch it because they were representing themselves.
Well, Amanda, he could have given lip service to Bruin and then ruled the way he was going to rule anyway. But by ignoring Bruin, it is so blatant that,
right. But
wow.
But frankly, technically, if he really wanted to ignore it, the best thing to do is go, you guys are very smart, but you're not lawyers, and you missed this, and this. And so in that case, I can't rule on this because it's missing pieces. See ya. Bye.
Okay.
Right now, I just before Susan gets to this next story, blood pressure medications, if you take them, make sure you already have. Susan, go ahead and go.
In September 2021, Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat, signed AB 173, which allows for the disclosure of highly sensitive information, including a gun owner's name, address, place of birth, phone number, occupation, driver's license or ID number, race, sex, height, weight, hair color, eye color, and even their social security number and the types of firearms that they own, to universities and any bona fide research institute. In practice, the legislation encourages the sharing of this highly personal information with anti-gun organizations that have little incentive to safeguard the data. In January, NRA-ILA filed a lawsuit challenging the law. More recently, California demonstrated why this type of detailed gun owner data shouldn't be kept at all. On Monday, June 27th, California Attorney General Rob Bonta, Democrat, announced the launch of the California Department of Justice Firearms Dashboard Portal. The data tool was designed to give granular firearms transaction and concealed carry weapons permit holder data to anyone visiting the DOJ's website. However, astute users quickly realized that the dashboard could be used to access the personally identifying information of California CCW holders, including date of birth, full name, and address. On July 14th, The Hill published an item titled, "How Machine Learning Can Identify Gun Buyers at Risk of Suicide," that touted a recent California Firearm Violence Research Center-funded study titled, "Machine Learning Analysis of Handgun Transactions to Predict Firearm Suicide Risk." New research out of the University of California, Davis suggests machine learning can forecast gun purchasers' likelihood of firearm suicide through the use of handgun purchasing data. Identifying those at risk allows for prevention interventions and can ultimately help reduce suicide rates. To concoct their algorithm, the anti-gun researchers assessed data from the California's Dealers Record of Sale (DROS) database, which includes information on nearly 5 million handgun transaction records.
So what I'm taking out of this is California now has a pre-crime division, and that they just know, because they know that they're going to come take your guns because you're going to commit suicide with them 18 years, 6 months, 3 days, and 25 seconds from now. This is just another ploy to get your guns away from you. This is nothing but pure baloney. UC Davis, I mean, it's not tied IU, but it's that far away.
Well, I personally take offense at the fact that in all that information, they're going to share my weight. How dare they?
So right you are, Amanda. It turns out with this data breach, they outed a large number of Democrat politicians and judges and law enforcement officers. Man, they did not make many friends. John?
Well, I presume this is all tied to anti-gun researcher Dr. Garen Wintemute. And this is a question for you, Rob, because, you unfortunately had to live in California for a good number of years. And
I served my time.
You were born there, I think.
Yeah.
But what's the reputation of UCal Davis? I mean, I thought they were more of an ag school.
They used to be conservative. Yes, it does have a reputation as the UC Ag School in the system. But Wintemute, pitched his anti-gun funding, and they took it. So they have a academic who will give them all the excuses they'd like.
We get George making a comment here. Next, we'll get Minority Report. Yeah,
you're right, George.
That's what I was referring to with the pre-crime division. Yeah.
But by the way, all those arguments that, we can identify firearm suicide, by the way, in states, counties, and even in countries that limit firearms ownership or purchase to say, we want to reduce suicide. No, at most they can limit the tool. They have virtually no effect on the actual suicide rate.
All right, Susan, I think we're going to get just one more news story, and you want to take us to Oregon?
Under ballot measure 114, you could literally wait forever for permission to purchase a home defense firearm. The measure requires a class with live fire training before a person can apply for a permit to purchase a firearm. There are virtually no facilities that will be available for this training. For first-time gun buyers, this could well require that you have a gun before you can get a permit to buy a gun. The measure only allows those approved by police to provide the required training to apply for a permit. Police in Oregon are underfunded and understaffed. There is no plan in place to actually provide any training, and virtually no police have the facilities or manpower to provide the classes. Police in urban areas are already not responding to most violent crimes. Police in rural areas are spread thin and rarely have the facilities for the required class. The permitting agent can demand any additional information to issue the permit, opening up endless opportunities for abuses. The Oregon State Sheriff's Association has estimated that if a person somehow could complete the required training, the permitting process would cost sheriffs, that number cannot be right, 40 with a whole bunch of zeros behind it, $40 million annually. There is nothing in the measure that provides any funding, and the fees included would not come close to covering the costs. The estimate of cost to local police is $51.2 million annually the first year and $47.5 million in subsequent years. The anticipated revenue is only $19.5 million. The sponsors of the measure have no plan on how to pay for it.
If this thing is passed, if this thing makes it through and is voted in, basically say goodbye to permits in Oregon until the Supreme Court smacks it down. Look, how you have to have a gun to get a permit to purchase a gun. I mean, come on. John, you're up in show notes. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the idiocy of Oregon politics, the Californication of the state. The only good thing I've read recently is in their governor's race, you have a very left-wing Democrat and a fairly left-wing independent who really is a Democrat. And they may split enough of the vote that the Republican can slip in as governor. And I was like, that's kind of good for once.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back,
the state used to elect Republicans all the time.
Oregon, it's a fairly recent thing that Oregon has become far left-leaning. That and Seattle, Washington, and Oregon used to be fairly red, but not so much anymore.
No.
Going back, I want to get one more comment in before we go to break. Going back to our previous story, George says, my wish for this year, get undoxed. I know it's not going to happen. That once the cat's out of that bag, it's you're pretty much done. And sorry that the state did that to you, George. But anyway, let's go to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got two GGUs we're going to discuss. But first, we're going to be hearing from CNJFO. We'll be right back right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the coalition of New Jersey firearms owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
Welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan, first one up is in Georgia. Let's talk about this one.
Officers responding to a call of a person being shot found Mr. Smith with a gunshot wound to his upper torso. Mr. Smith resides at the location they were dispatched to, and he was immediately transported to a trauma center by emergency services. The Criminal Investigations section took over the shooting investigation, and in the course of the investigation found out that Mr. Smith had been physically assaulting his wife, Mrs. Smith, in the home. During the assault, Mrs. Smith was able to retrieve a gun and shot Mr. Smith once. She then escaped and called authorities. Police are ruling the shooting self-defense and have issued warrants for the arrest of Mr. Smith for the offenses of false imprisonment, battery, criminal damage to property, theft by taking, and interference with a 911 call. These are charged as violations of the Family Violence Act. He also had warrants for his arrest at the time for failure to appear in Troup County and probation violations in Clayton and Fulton counties.
A restraining order is your friend. So is on body carry. Paul?
This is a tough one. We often say, Rob, you and I have talked about the what if game lots of times.
Yep.
And we've it's something Susan and I practice a lot. But this is a tough what if. What if the person's attacking you? What if the person that is trying to kill you is a loved one? Are you sure you can take that shot if you're being attacked, your life is threatened, and yet the person that's attacking you, unfortunately we've had a few DGUs where it's an adult child attacking an elderly parent. These are the most heart-wrenching ones there are.
I think in a lot of relationship ones like this, not parent and child, that they're together, that the love has broken off already, and they're together because they haven't gotten apart, or they can't figure out how to get apart, or they can't figure out how to get away. And so, I don't think it's quite, it's hard, but I don't think it's quite where you're putting it if it's an abuser.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Right. The way we paint it is everything's perfect, and then one day your loved one is trying to kill you. Typically not how it happens. Escalating violence, and that escalation can be gradual. There can be momentary abstinence of violence, but it keeps coming back. Wow, okay. What's hard to do is to say, this is broken, didn't turn out the way I wanted, now what do I do?
It's the boiled frog.
There you go. That's why you're a writer.
Following up on one thing that Amanda said, like the love was over, the marriage is irrevocably broken. Unfortunately, sometimes you have situations where the police are called, the husband has been beating on the wife, they try to arrest the husband, and then the wife turns around and starts attacking the police officers.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of these things that you just can't, I can't quite put my fingers, around, or arms around, but I mean, it happens. And so even without love, sometimes there's that attachment that, I don't know.
John, a lot of states have a domestic violence law. If the cops arrive and it looks like somebody's been beaten, somebody's going to jail. It's not, oh, we're going to, the issue was, okay, you say it's not a problem, blah, blah. No, someone is going to go into jail, and then a judge will make that call.
Yeah.
Right.
In court
It's
later.
not, do you want to press charges? Charges are going forward whether you want them to or not.
Right.
Right. Because part of that is sort of the get out of jail free card for the other spouse, because otherwise when they get out, or if they didn't, it was you called the police, or you had me arrested, or you pressed charges. And in this case, they were like, I didn't. The court did.
Yeah.
And one thing we need to recognize, the aggressor is not always the male.
Correct.
Right.
And men are very loath to acknowledge that they are actually the battered spouse.
Very much so.
To their masculinity.
Have you ever, I can remember being probably 10 years old, and I went to bingo with my grandmother. And there was a husband and wife couple there. And it was horrible, because the wife was the abuser and you could see it. And she would reach over, and if she wasn't happy with what he did or said, she would reach over and she grabbed him and she would pinch twist until he almost crumpled. And, that was 50 years ago. And people were like, yeah, and nobody did anything. But for me, that was the formative, that being an abuser does not sex does not matter. The bully is the abuser, whoever it is in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I think about that man periodically, because it was ugly.
I'm sorry,
Susan. Now, open secret. Susan and I talk a lot. We're on our way back from my ride this morning, and Susan's looking over show notes, and she read me this story. I'm like, wow. So, Susan, let's go to Colorado.
Ken Malden was jolted out of a sound sleep by his wife incessant screaming in their split-level home. Their children were sleeping one floor below. All of a sudden, she yelled, "There's a bear in the house!" Kelly Malden had been awakened by the couple's barking dogs that somehow didn't wake her husband. It was just before dawn on a Saturday. She walked to the door and found herself staring face to face with a huge male black bear, which weighed in at about 400 pounds. It was 10 feet away from her in the dining room. Ken Malden grabbed his .40 caliber pistol and took his wife's place in the door and shot once. He aimed at center mass on the bear. He hit the bear, and it charged him as he continued to shoot. The bear got to about 5 feet from him and then turned to the stairs leading to the front door. The bear crashed through a banister and slid down the stairs as Malden emptied his gun into the animal. The bear had been mortally wounded. After the shooting stopped, the bear lay breathing and heaving between Malden and his 3 sons who were sleeping downstairs. He called 911, and one of his sons called him on his cell phone, and he told him to stay in your room. The bear had moved an unopened bag of dog food across the dining room. It was believed that the bear had entered the home by flipping the levered handle of the unlocked front door. Police and state wildlife officers arrived a short time later and determined that the bear was indeed dead. They used a winch to pull it into a truck and were impressed by the size. Colorado has about 12,000 bears, and they've been known to commit home invasions quite often. Homeowners shooting them is quite rare. Neighbors had talked about a bear getting into their garages. Black bears tend to avoid humans, but once they realize food is behind a window or in a bird feeder, they return. The bear's hide and meat will be donated to people who have signed up on a list to receive them, and its head will go up for auction. Malden hopes the break-in at his home sparks greater awareness to prompt something good from something so terrible that happened. We're in a situation now where we have town bears that have lost all of their natural fear of humans. In my mind, that's what we have to address, said Malden.
Amen.
This really it illustrates the problem of urban bears and people thinking, oh, it's a cool thing to feed the bear. We have bears all the time locally here, including my own neighborhood. Neighbors 2 houses down said, oh, there was a bear came to our front door. Don't leave out food for your dog or your cat. Well, more likely your cat. Don't leave any. Make sure your garbage cans are in, or at least they can't be opened easily. And bears are smarter than you would think. They can actually, I've seen too many videos of them opening a car door.
Yes. Yes. My only comment here, two of them really. Number one, lock your darn doors. Secondly is, it's a great thing the guy had a handgun on him. Wouldn't it have been nice if he had like a 30-30 Marlin or maybe something a little more powerful than a 40 caliber handgun?
He wouldn't have had nearly as cool a story.
That's true.
That's true. So, if he had a shotgun but it had birdshot in it, I think the handgun's better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Until you get to contact range, and I never want to get contact range with a bear.
Yeah, whoa.
Let me get, I got two comments I want to get in here. First one from George Geller says, you should toss in one unarmed self-defense story each week to show what happens when the government takes away our right to defend ourselves. MC agreed, but he says, however, usually an unarmed self-defense story is just called victim stories.
Yeah.
Right. It's really hard to do a Google search for the plastic spoon from Wendy's.
There is that. I do see a few unarmed defense stories, and I could look. We could maybe look at putting them in one from time to time. I don't know that we're going to see one a week. Rob, you look for self-defense stories. I don't know that we're going to find even maybe one a month would come across.
The classic is knucklehead picks on guy who just walked out of the dojo and decides to rob him, and the guy goes, "Go get a buddy because I'm used to beating up 2 or 3 people at a time." So yeah, wow.
Or
people who know how to fight are impressive.
Yes. Or bad guy takes a gun to go rob somebody. All of a sudden, good guy takes gun from bad guy, which happens a lot more often than you would think. All of a sudden, it's an armed self-defense, but it didn't start that way.
Yeah, I don't include those on self-defense gun stories. I just think it's a bad plan.
Right. If my plan involves taking your gun, no.
Nah.
I think you may be able to find more unarmed self-defense stories where somebody's using their Ford Explorer against a carjacker.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
Absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for our DGUs. Let's go ahead and we're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk about what we've been doing in media, and we'll get to that, and we'll shut the show down right after we hear from JPFO.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Rob, I'm guessing by glancing at show note, there's not a lot that has been going up at Slowfax that you want to promote.
Paul, I've been ill for now 6+ weeks. I'm not sharp enough to write. Not like I used to. John, you still got a brain. Tell us about it.
Well, first I want to salute the CEO of Smith & Wesson, Mark Smith, for his Take No Prisoners response to congressional anti-gunners. He responded and he stood up and stood proud. And if you haven't read what he was, go search, see it on my blog. I have the whole statement. It's everywhere. Meanwhile, Giffords is saying that you can be pro-2A, a gun owner, and want common sense gun laws. Well, you know, I agree. And I came up with a list of my own. However, they're not going to like my common sense gun laws. And on a more serious note, David Dell'Aquila, who has secured new attorneys in his lawsuit against the NRA for wasting donations given to the NRA on stuff like Wayne suits. It looks like he's got some heavy hitters this time, and they came on board the day before the case would have been dismissed for lack of counsel. Finally, for our listeners in New York City, and I hope we have some, you have until August 31st to get your carry permit application in without having to go through the new rules adopted by the New York State Assembly. The New York Police Department issued an emergency order on this Friday. It said you do not need a statement on necessity. I'm looking at it as the equivalent of Freedom Week, but for carry permits. Freedom Week was when Judge Benitez allowed Californians to buy standard capacity magazines and before putting in an injunction when it got appealed. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
I gotta say, John, one of them that I absolutely agree when your common sense gun law that I would shout from the rooftops. Let's get suppressors out of the NFA. I'm right there with you. I've got hearing damage, and suppressors are just make sense, and yet
it's common sense for your health.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get the NFA out of the NFA.
That too.
I like that too. Amanda, anything, Women for Gun Rights, or anything you want to promote?
Well, we're going to. I'm going to rerun a show that we recorded a bit ago for Natalie Widener, and for some reason, it's not in the OpsLens archives, and so she can't share it. So Friday night, we are going to pull that back up and fix that, so you can watch Chronicles of the Range Monkey in an interview. She's a pretty impressive. A 2A gal, and if that is what our young generation looks like, the world is going to be in really good hands.
She is a very sharp young lady. I had the opportunity to, when we were at the Mingle this past May, I had an opportunity to sit down with her for an interview. Yeah, she's super impressive, and she's one of the range safety officers at my local gun range that Susan and I have a paid membership to, and I don't get down there enough. But super impressive young lady, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing that this coming Friday. So
there you go.
All right. On my end, we just wrapped up about an hour and a half ago. We wrapped up a bullet with John Petrolino. If you are interested in anything New Jersey, go check that out. He did a great job of explaining just all the darn hoops and hurdles you have to go through if you want a New Jersey carry permit. They are coming out. It's a trickle. It's not a flood, but they are being issued. And John and I talk about the expense and all the little I dots and T crosses you got to do to actually get a New Jersey carry permit. And honestly, it's a bit ridiculous. We need some more slapping down in New Jersey for real rights to come about there. So All right, let me go look back over. No, we're good on comments. Looking over at show notes. I'm going to say that wraps up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. For Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
And be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
Okay, we are clear of recording. I'm getting ready to shut down the broadcast, and I don't think we're going to do any of a post-show hangout. Just thanks for watching, everybody. I'm so hungry. I got to go get something to eat. But thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Come back next Monday and see us again. Until then, everybody, we'll catch you later. Oh, come on. What's going on here?
Yeah.
There we go.